Hello, I'm Bettina Winkler from Visiopharm and want to welcome you to the second webinar of our masterclass series about the challenges of IHC standardization. This week we have Rasmus Røe with us, pathologist at the Aalborg University. Rasmus is also part of the Nordic QC organization and will talk about how EQAs are advancing diagnostic immunohistochemistry. With that, I will hand over to Rasmus to start the presentation.
Thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Rasmus Røe and I'm a pathologist working at Aalborg University Hospital. I have a PhD in immunohistochemistry with a small dab of image analysis, but my main time is working as a hematopathologist in Aalborg Pathology Department. And as a sideshow, I also work with the Nordic QC organization, and that will be the main focus of my talk today. I'm so happy that Visiopharm invited me to give this talk. I always enjoy sharing the wonderful message about external quality assessment in IHC. So I wanted to start off with giving you a small example of why quality assessment and external quality control could be a big issue and is very important in IHC labs. This is two serial section stains for estrogen receptor in two different laboratories. And as you can see, there's more or less no difference between the IHC quality of these two tumors. It looks as if both tumors have a very high degree of estrogen receptor positivity, and more or less all of the tumor cells are positive. However, if we look at another tumor stained by the same two laboratories, on the left, we see a lot of the tumor cells that still have some degree of positivity. However, on the other side, we see that more or less all the tumor cells are completely negative. And that actually means that this tumor will be categorized as estrogen receptor negative. That would have been very hard to distinguish if you only had the tumors in one of the labs. However, if you compare labs, as you do in an external quality assessment program, you will be able to detect these differences. And another important thing that you can identify in these quality assessment program is which controls that actually should be used for the different stains. On the top, we now see uterine cervix and tonsil, and we can see that lab A stains all the uterine cervical cells beautifully, and also the germinal center follicular dendritic cells are positive for estrogen receptor. However, the lab B do not have the sufficient sensitivity of the protocol to identify these cells as positive. So this kind of means that external quality assessment could be a very good idea to participate in for different pathology laboratories. External quality assessment gives a way of providing objective testing of the laboratory performance. And you can either do that by comparing the performance of a lab to a group of different laboratories or to a specific reference laboratory. And in Nordic QC, we have selected the last method, where we compare the stains of the different participating laboratories to the reference laboratory in Aalborg, where we have made a lot of tests to validate the stain. There's a lot of benefits to participate in these quality assessment program. It will give you an evidence of the actual quality, and it can also be used in the more general sense to detect systematic problems with associated kits if assessment programs identify some systematic problems with kits or specific antibodies. However, there are also some drawbacks, and that is that participation 1 or 2 times a year in a marker that is only examined a few times is only a snapshot of quality. And if that's all you do for controlling your quality, it will give you a false sense of security. So you cannot alone rely on external quality assessment protocols, but you also have to do some quality assessment in your own laboratory. And now I will give you an introduction to the Nordic QC program that I am part of. Nordic QC is actually called Nordic Immunohistochemical Quality Control and is an international academic proficiency testing program that is independent and not-for-profit organization. Nordic QC is located in Denmark, in the city of Aalborg, on the top of Denmark, and we are physically located in the Department of Pathology at Aalborg University Hospital. At the moment, we have 7 people employed, and all of these people are more or less part-time employees. This means that they also work a part of their time in the clinical laboratory. So we still have this leg in the clinical organization. We have numerous collaborating partners, both pathologists and technicians throughout, especially Europe, but also in USA. And we maintain good relations with a lot of different companies that are involved in IHC. This is an overview of the Nordic QC program. Each year we have these different modules, as we call it, and a module is a collection of different markers. We have the general module, which contains markers for general surgical pathology laboratories. Then we have some specialized markers for breast cancer, specifically HER2, estrogen receptor, and progesterone. Then we have the FISH module with HER2, and the newest module is the companion module, which at the moment more or less focuses on PD-L1, but I suspect that more companion markers will be included in this module in the coming years. At the moment, we service almost 700 international laboratories from almost 60 different countries. And you can see that actually it is the breast cancer module that is most popular, but we also have a lot of laboratories participating in the other modules. If we look on the general purpose of Nordic QC, it is of course to assess the quality of immunohistochemical stains in the participating laboratories. This is based on using standard processed tissues that we circulate to the different laboratories. Then we also want to identify optimal and insufficient results among these stains, and we want to correlate this to specific antibodies or protocols or even specific platforms to give an idea on which protocols actually work. Then we want to publish these results on our homepage and specifically also try to publish important findings in scientific journals. One of the most important things is that we also want to give individually tailored recommendations for each laboratory on how to improve their quality. Finally, we want to collaborate with the industry in order to improve the field of IHC. And if I move on to the specific method for Nordic QC, this is very concrete on how we actually set up a proficiency run. When we prepare for such a run, we construct a tissue microarray block containing critical tissues for a specific epitope. This means that for each epitope, we will decide on interesting tissues and select a lot of different normal tissues and tumors from the archive of the Department of Pathology and select the best tissues to be used in the block that should be circulated to the participants. When the run is starting up, we asked all the participants of the Nordic QC program to submit their staining protocol on the homepage. This means that it's obligatory for participants that want to be part of a run to submit a staining protocol. And this protocol is actually very detailed. We want to know specific temperatures and how long time the tissues have been exposed for antibodies and epitope retrieval. Once we have all these specific information, we circulate slides to the participants. And then we ask the participants to stain these slides and return them to Nordic QC. When all the slides have been returned, an expert group of pathologists, both internal and external, and expert technicians meet for assessment of these slides. After the actual assessment, there will be a rather long time of data analysis of these protocols and results in order to identify optimal and insufficient staining protocols that we can publish on Nordic QC. And finally, we will return an assessment mark and a tailored protocol recommendation to each of the participants. I'll give you some examples. This is an overview from the Nordic QC homepage where we can see the different parameters that we actually ask the participants to submit. We want to know the staining platform, the primary antibody clone and lot numbers and dilution factor of the antibody and which diluent buffer, how the epitope retrieval was accomplished, if the laboratory used any kind of proteolytics, and a lot of information about the visualization system. And this is an example of the number of slides that we need to cut for each run. We set up this block typically containing 5 to 6 different tissues, and these tissues have all been fixed according to the ASCO-CAP guidelines with 24 to 48 hours of fixation in formalin. The tissues are selected in such a manner that it contains both normal and clinically relevant tissues, both normal tissue and tumor tissue. And we also want different levels of antigen expression. So some of the tissues will be very strong expressors of the selected epitopes, while others will be moderately or low-level expressors or even some negative tissues. And this is in order to identify both the sensitivity and the specificity of the protocol. So we sent out 2 unstained slides for each marker to the participants, ask them to stain the protocol and return it to Nordic QC. And this is a picture from one of the COSI assessor meetings where we look through a microscope on a monitor to each of the slides. On the other monitor, we have a standardized staining obtained in the reference slides, and based on the expression patterns in the different tissues, we provide each slide with a score, either optimal, which means it's perfect or very close to the reference slides, good if it's fully acceptable in order to identify clinically relevant expression levels. However, there could be some optimization in order to obtain a better signal to noise ratio. And then the 2 insufficient scores, which we call borderline or poor, where we have a generally too weak or even false negative staining of one of the included tissues, or a false positive staining reaction in one or more of the tumors. When we have compiled all the scores of all the laboratories and correlated this to the different parameters of the protocols, we are able to provide a general report of the assessment. And this is just the introduction to one of these reports. I will show you an example later on the Nordic QC homepage. And this shows the purpose of this PAX8 testing and which tissues we decided to include. And if we move on, I will show you more or less the most important, but also the most complicated table of these reports, where we can see the performance of each of the antibodies. And if we just see the concentrated antibodies, we can find the rapid monoclonal antibody SP348, which had a lot of labs that had optimal staining, some good, a few borderline, and a few poor. This gave an overall performance of 91%. So that's a very successful antibody. And if we find some of the polyclonal that have a tendency to be insufficient, then we can see that not a lot of these actually performed very well. So this gives us the information to give some detailed overview on the different problems. And these different categories describe this. So overall, if we have analyzed all these parameters, we are able to give some kind of information on parameters that will give you an optimal performance of IHC. And the most important is to select a successful antibody. And there are different problems with antibodies. It can be a poor antibody that will never perform. Some are less robust. That means that the range of concentration where it performs optimally is very narrow. Then some companies have poorly calibrated RTUs where the dilution is either too strong or too weak. And then some antibodies can perform different on different stainer platforms. I'll show you a few examples of these antibody problems. This is 2 melanomas, A1 and A2, stained for SOX10. And Lab 1 has used an optimal protocol with the antibody EP268. And as expected, we see that more or less all the tumor cells are strongly positive. However, another lab stained the exact same tumors with a polyclonal antibody and got false negative results in both tumors. Actually, the same antibody was also applied by a third lab that got much better staining. If we look at the tissue controls, we see that in skin, the optimal laboratory got a strong staining of melanocytes, and in appendix, staining of the Schwann cells, the nerve sheath cells. But in the insufficient lab, gave a much weaker staining of these melanocytes and Schwann cells. And the third lab that actually were able to stain the melanomas gave a false positive staining of the skin cells. And you can also see the epithelial cells of the appendix were positive. So the polyclonal antibodies did not work. This clone did work. And that is also seen in the Nordic QC assessment, where we saw that the EP268 clone performed very good, but the polyclonal antibody all failed. And another example of MOM1, where the MOM1P1 antibody gave optimal staining with strong staining of plasma cells in appendix, while the clones BC5 and MRQ43 gave either aberrant cytoplasmic staining in the epithelial cells or an overall false positive in both the epithelial cells or muscle cells. And that was also seen in the Nordic QC results. Then we also see, and I will not show examples of this, but that some antibodies are very good, but the laboratories select a very low dilution, meaning that they will not be able to get a good sensitivity of the protocol. Perhaps they have insufficient or incorrect epitope retrieval. Perhaps they use a low pH buffer when protocols should use a high pH buffer. Or perhaps a laboratory uses a proteinase epitope retrieval instead of heat-induced epitope retrieval. Some labs select less sensitive visualization systems in a marker that requires a very high sensitivity of the protocol. And of course, we can also look at the quality of the morphology of the stains. If slides have been boiled too much, it will give an impaired morphology that will be hard to read. So based on all these information, we will be able to give each lab a tailored recommendation on how to improve. This could be, this is just different examples, but it could be that we want the laboratory to replace their primary antibody with another clone that could be more successful. Perhaps the lab should calibrate the antibody concentration to a higher or lower level. They should optimize their epitope retrieval or perhaps select another here time, temperature or pH. And I actually think that this is one of the most important things in Nordic QC, where we give specific recommendations to the laboratories on how to perform. This could be a typical individual feedback to one of the labs, where we have the overview of the whole assessment here, the different epitopes and how the laboratory performed. And for each of these insufficient results, we will have a specific comment on what went wrong, false negative reactions, and how to improve the different protocols. This is from a study we published in 2017 concerning SOX10, where we saw the performance of different protocols when we compared monoclonal and polyclonal antibodies. And as you can see, in BON 45, we have an okay performance of the monoclonal, but a much worse performance of the polyclonal. And that was more or less the same in 48. So over time, when more laboratories got the advice to stop using the polyclonal, we have seen a decrease in the use of the polyclonal antibody and an increase in the use of monoclonal antibody. And this has resulted in an increased pass rate among the laboratories. So it actually helps to be part of an external quality assessment program. This is an overview of the performance of all the laboratories based on the scoring of all the labs. And when we split this up in the different modules, we still see that a lot of different slides become insufficient, either borderline or poor. It's easy to see that the breast cancer module has the highest percentage of optimal results, and this is specifically related to the HER2 and estrogen receptor, a test that we have performed very many times. I think it's more than 35 times it has been repeated. So the laboratories have had a lot of possibilities to prove it. And it's very nice to see that it's actually possible to reach these high levels. But in the general module, we still see that more or less 25 to 30% of these slides actually become insufficient. And latest, we did a survey among the different participants where we asked them to rate us, and we got a very high score from the laboratories on their overall performance of Nordic QC. We wanted also some input this time on which markers we should select for the next run. So I think this will be an annual thing to ask the laboratories on both the performance of Nordic QC, but also how we are supposed to continue working as an organization. Now I want to switch to show you some of the online resources that are available on the Nordic QC homepage. So I'll just switch to a browser. So this is the front page of the Nordic QC homepage, and I want to specifically direct you to these three areas of the homepage. The first one is called assessment, and it gives you a list of the different epitopes that we have tested through the time. The last run number and here is listed here. So if we select once, it could be TTF, and click on TTF, we can see a short description of both the marker and how it's supposed to use. A very important area here is the selection of controls. And there's also a specific link to the latest reports concerning this epitope. If we go to the protocols area, this could be the starting point when you are starting out with a new marker. I'll just select PAX8. And as you can see here, we have 17 available protocols for PAX8. So you are able to select PAX8, find your staining platform, or perhaps find the clone that you want to work with. And then you can specifically just click the PDF and have a start out protocol. Of course, it's important that you validated this in your own laboratory, but it will at least give you a starting point. And then finally, the controls, where we have a list of suggested controls for specific immunohistochemical staining. If we select, as an example, CDX2, the list suggests that you can use appendix, pancreas, and tonsil as controls. And if we select this, we have an overview of the expression pattern that are expected in these different tissues. We have both a high expression tissue, a low expressor tissue, and a negative tissue. And this box will give you an description of the staining pattern, but you're also able to see this as a scan and click to enlarge it, so you can get a closer look on how the tissues are supposed to be seen. So this is a very strong resource when you are testing IHC protocols. I need to mention that it is not all scans that are available for non-members, only the 4 stains of the primary panel. So you have to be a member to get access to this. If we have found these controls on the Nordic QC homepage, you can simply select these different tissues and use them as part of your internal control tissue on your slides. So overall, moving on to the conclusions, I think that it's fair to say that external quality assurance provides some objective evidence of the performance of different labs, but it's especially this comparison between the different labs and identification of methodological errors that are a strong point of EQA programs. And based on this knowledge that we obtain by seeing all these different protocols and stains, we are able to provide directions for improvement and controls. However, these results also indicate that improvement of IHC is still strongly needed, and EQA schemes the industry and experts, they must work together in order to obtain better IHC protocols. And we pathologists and working together with technicians and the industry, we must describe these requirements for optimal IHC performance in order to be able to identify optimal protocols. But still, 20 to 25% of all IHC stains that are returned to Nordic are still insufficient. It can be in some ways explained by new labs participating and perhaps new antibodies, but one still must ask how many IHC stains that are actually produced both by labs that participate in EQA schemes, but also in non-participating labs that actually are insufficient. And how will this affect the patient and the possibilities of optimal diagnostic pathology? And also, how many scientific publications are actually based on these insufficient IHC stains? So that was all for me. I want to thank all my collaborators in Nordic QC and also Visiopharm for giving me this excellent opportunity to address you all.